And when I say this, we never got a penny from them. That's not hyperbole. I'm not paraphrasing. We literally never got 1 cent in royalties from them ever. I've never received a royalty check from Victory Records ever. And all in, we've sold about 110,000 albums for them.
From Kansas City to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Switch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The Switch is on, Battle Line Podcast. Joining us, very excited, Scott Ian Lewis, vocalist and co-founding member of Carnifex, author, comic creator. He's on to promote the upcoming 9th full-length studio album, October 6th, Necromantium. And I actually, for one, it's a pleasure to have you on, man. But the way that this happened was, you guys who are the listeners know, just a couple of months back, we had Corey Taylor from Slipknot on. The tie-in there was he has the Taylor Foundation, which is a veterans organization helping vets coming back with post-traumatic stress and that type of thing. And when we put up the Instagram stuff and Chris's post went up, I saw Scott Ian Lewis commented on it, and I'm like, dude, did you know Scott Ian Lewis from Carnifex is a fan of yours? And the reason it was cool to me is, like, there's bands that you expect that from, like Five Finger Death Punch type bands. And if they were fans of Chris's, I'd be like, oh, all right, that's cool. But I love when these two different worlds collide, because it's, the extreme metal genre is its own thing, its own scene.
I don't know. I mean, because, and it's got, we used to call it, I know it's death metal, then it was thrash. Then I know there's different words. I mean, there's so many different words for every.
It's just
it's like, but
metal.
But Cannibal Corpse was big when I was growing up, and that was big in the military. And I'm not trying to give props out to a competing band or nothing, but a lot of the guys that hey, man, that's kicking indoor music that you're playing. So it was actually pretty cool, and to see that, I'm like, I could see Carnifex with the military and with a lot of the guys, because the guttural sound that you guys have, it's just, and you do have to go to those dark places. There are places that I even told somebody today, it's like, hey man, when you're kicking in a door, I'm a Christian, I believe in God, but you still have to dig in those holes to go to those dark places to do bad things to bad people. And whether you like it or not, man, that's your music. At least in my opinion, I mean, that does assist to go to those dark places.
You're dead on, man. You're dead on. And actually, I've had the fortune of hearing a lot of great stories from guys in the service, whether it be Army, Marines, wherever, that say, dude, I was, launching 50 cal rounds to your music, or like you're saying, kicking indoors. And actually, one of the guys that became a good friend of mine was a Ranger, 3rd Bat, and 75th. And so, not to tell his story and give any of his, life away, but we became good friends, and he actually got to interview him for a script I was working on, and told me some of his experiences, and I've always just had an immense amount of respect for those dudes.
I was 2nd Ranger, so I was with the better battalion. If he's listening, he's like that. I was like, sure. No, I'm kidding. 3rd Ranger, those guys are hardcore. I'm down at the flagpole. What? Can you mind me asking? I mean, it's
was his name.
No
Yeah.
shit. That's it.
I don't know if you know that name, but yeah,
I
Charles
know
Wolford.
I know the name. We don't know each other. Actually, I do know
Okay.
the name. I do. And do you mind telling what you guys used to talk about a little bit? I know we're getting off subject a little
Yeah,
bit, but I'd
I
love
don't
to
know.
hear it.
Bleep his name out or something because I feel like I don't want to, I don't want to tell
Yeah,
his
that's
stories.
fine.
You know what I
Beep it
mean?
out, Harold.
We'll get
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But I mean, I was working on a script that actually the lead character was a former Ranger, and so I really wanted to get in deep with it. And growing up, like Full Metal Jacket was my
Yeah.
favorite movie. Absolutely loved it. And
Classic.
my dad was in the Navy as well, so he would tell me stories about what he did, and he got drafted for Vietnam and all that stuff, and so he would tell me his stories,
Wow.
and so I just always loved it. And then when I got into writing, I'm like, hey, if I'm going to try to create a character with this type of background, I really do need to get into it and get some real stories. And he told me some rough ones, and I really don't. I feel a little weird about telling his stories, but they're on deployment, and I think they were coming home in about 2 weeks, and they're guarding a voting location, a local vote out there, and trying to keep the
Yeah.
democracy thing,
Yeah.
hope alive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a couple points of entry, and they got some dudes stationed at each one, and they're going home in 2 weeks, and everything was chill until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And someone got in and detonated a vest or something. They don't know exactly what, and all of a sudden, it's chaos, it's death, it's violence, and they're trying to figure out where this guy come from, and it was stuff like that where it goes from, you're talking about what you're going to do, getting home just in time for 4th of July, to all of a sudden it's that, which even right now kind of gives me chills. Like it's just my hat's off to those guys, and I don't mean to tell his story, but just to give you, I guess, insight into what
Well,
we spoke about. That
it's
was it. It's
it's
heavy.
good. It's good to hear. I mean, it's good for people, and it's good that you take those stories to heart, because there are many that don't. There are many out there that, again, it's so far away removed from their life. It's like watching a movie. I'll be honest, and don't get me wrong, I love our movie. I love war movies out there. Some of my buddies from Black Hawk Down, Dale Sizemore's a good friend, Danny McKnight. They see it as movies, but when it really does happen, and like I said, you getting chills. Honestly, that makes me feel good, because it makes me feel like you really take this to heart. You understand. You understand as best as you can, because it is.
100%.
It is. It's tough to be going home, or even that I'm Benghazi. I stayed 2 weeks later. I was supposed to go home 2 weeks, and three of us did. Roan was one of them. It cost him his life. He was supposed to go home 2 weeks earlier. And it always seems to happen when you're about ready to go home. Seems like, but that's one thing is that the sacrifice and that went on with the guys, and again, you willing to take that to heart. It does mean a lot to veterans and people like myself. It's like, well, it wasn't all in vain, even though we realized later the politicians and foreign policies, it was all horse shit, and I know that now. I still would go back and do it again, because I love working, I love the job. But when people like yourself say it, and say it with heart, it makes us like, okay, you know what, it still was worth it. And I'm sure he would say the same thing if he already hasn't said the same thing to you.
Yeah, he would have to answer that question for you. But yeah, I do take it to heart, and I'm, I feel like a cliche saying it, but I personally, I feel a little guilty for not doing my part sometimes, and because I was telling Ian right before we went live, is I grew up in Fallbrook, which is right off the north gate of Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
And Coronado is 20 minutes away from me. I can see San Clemente Island from my house. Obviously, MCRD is just down the 5. So I grew up around that stuff. My grandfather was a Navy officer, was on the USS Essex. He was like the 4th in command on that ship. My grandfather on my dad's side was an FC3, and then my dad was in the Navy as well. And we have other extended family that served that was in the Marine Corps. So I feel like I dodged this bullet, being, I turned 18 in 2002. So it was like the stars aligned for it to all go down. But I was super interested in being a cop at the time. So I was a San Diego County Sheriff Explorer, and I was doing the cop thing, and then I aged out of the program when I was 19 and applied. But this is '02, late '02, early '03. Law enforcement wasn't really hiring the way they are now. Their ranks were full and people weren't retiring. So I didn't get hired. 19-year-old kid. Of course, I didn't get hired. And then a year later, this band blows up off of MySpace, and we just got shot out of this cannon. And it wasn't until the pandemic hit that I even took my head up to breathe. And so somehow in there, even our first bass player, Stevie, who was on our first record, he joined the Army in 2007 and went and served till 2013, 2014. No. And so I don't know, it was just like all around me, but it just didn't happen. And sometimes I feel guilt about that. It's like, dang, I should have gone and done my part, but here I am.
You may have a bullet with your name on it. That's what I tell guys. Don't ever think that if you were supposed to go down that journey, that path, then it would have went. I do believe we have passed. I really do. Now we take turns left to right, or we get off the road a little bit, we come back. But I do believe that if that was your path, that would have been it. I mean, how many, if the band blew up, how often does that happen? It doesn't happen very often. So that was
especially a band of Carnifex's genre. It's like, it's such extreme metal that, and I know what time frame you're talking about, because we were talking before we recorded about bands like Amur, and like MySpace was this hub for extreme metal that really never would have been at the forefront, I feel like. And just around that time, like mid 2000s, stuff started to really take off.
You're totally right. And when we put that stuff up on MySpace, it was so early. This is summer of 2005 that we had no expectation. Going viral. Well, first of all, going viral wasn't a word, or wasn't a known phrase. So we had no expectation. We were just trying to play bars, or just something. And it's funny because I remember our old guitarist, instead of Carnifex, the other name he wanted to call the band was Hollow Point.
Oh no shit!
And we were like, well, there's this band in San Marcos called Hollow Point, so we got to pick something else, right?
Oh, so that'd have been badass, man.
Executioner. I know, right? So Rick was his name, our first guitarist. His roommate was a Marine that was stationed in Camp Pendleton. So, we always had that stuff around us. And then, the band took off, and we started touring in 2006. Quit my job, the whole deal, just out on the road full time. And then that kept up until 2020 when the pandemic happened. So it was no time to like lift your head up and think,
Yeah, the one thing I was wondering about that too is, with your music, I was speaking with Chris, I think last week, about, he was talking about the metal genres, and he called you guys thrash metal, and I was like, Carnifex is more like death metal, or deathcore.
That's what we called it when I was in high school. I mean,
but thrash is like Slayer, Megadeth. But the reason I ask is because I wonder, like, what bands did you draw inspiration from? Because I feel like when we were talking about bands like Amura, the Acacia Strain, bands that are considered more that deathcore genre, you guys are like a cross between that, but then also the traditional death metal of like Cannibal Corpse, who Chris mentioned, or Morbid Angel. You guys are kind of like a bridge between those two. Like, who inspired the sound of Carnifex?
It's funny you guys keep mentioning Cannibal Corpse, because literally, no joke, the two bands that inspired our sound the most are Cannibal Corpse and Bleeding Through. And our whole outlook was like, let's just put those two bands together. So if you listen to Bleeding Through, they have breakdowns and kind of more of like a metalcore structure to their songs. And then obviously Cannibal is gutturals, blast beats, and brutality. We just said, what happens if you mash them together? And that was Carnifex. That was our whole recipe right there.
By the way, how great is the Ace Ventura scene with Cannibal Corpse?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, it was inspiring. Actually, you're like, dang, we could be in a movie maybe.
Yeah, and we're gonna be all over the place, Scott, because music. But I get back to the military stuff. I didn't realize your father, your father, grandfather were military, and how was
yeah.
that? It's not. He was he a Marine? You said Navy, not a Marine. He was in the Navy, or was one of them a Marine?
Navy, both my grandfathers and my dad, they were all Navy.
So, and now you grew up around all those bases. How the hell were they? First of all, how did they let you even start a band, especially at that time, man? I mean, you must have.
That's why I ended up in a band, because I wasn't supposed to. That was, honestly, I think that's where a lot of my like desire to be in a band came from. Was I'm a rebellious boy, right? A rebellious young man. And I grew up in a very strict household, as you may imagine. Yeah. My mom grew up with her dad doing white glove inspections straight up. And so when it came time to raise us, it was very strict. Everything had to be clean. I had lots of chores. They had to be done right the first time. Otherwise, that was the end of my weekend. So, when you're young, growing up like that, of course you want to get away from it as fast as you can. Now as an adult, I'm like, I'm gonna raise my son that exact same way, teach him some structure and some follow through. But when you're young, it's like, what can I do to get out from under this thumb? And for me, it was music, right? Music was my little rebellion, and I was, doing the cop thing. So even being an explorer, it's from 16 to 19, obviously still pretty strict there. And I was mentioning to Ian right before we started was, my TO was a Vietnam vet, and I started in the Explorers in 2000, but then in 01, 9/11 rolls around, and the exact words my TO said to us were, "Hey, there's guys downrange taking care of that. We're here on the home front. We need to take care of this." And he got super serious with all of us about teaching us about the job and just looking out for the person next to you. And if you want to be a cop, like you need to see what the job's actually like, and you need to be prepared for it. So that was super strict, like trying to perform at that level as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old. And then I thought it was going to be my profession. That was really where I was all headed. And then not getting hired, my 19-year-old brain couldn't really figure out why. I was like, well, I don't understand. I got a letter of recommendation from my TO. I showed up. I didn't like my job, because I graduated high school when I was 16. I got a GED. I started working at a mortuary, which is a whole thing in itself. Because one of my other buddies, who's an explorer, he goes, "Yeah, he goes, that's a good job. You need to start desensitizing yourself." So I was working at this mortuary as a funeral director, and then just doing C-shift ride-alongs like 3-4 times a week. Did probably 200-300 ride-alongs, and saw the whole gamut as a kid. Yeah. We saved a girl's life one time that she tried to eat a bunch of pills and kill herself. And where we're at in San Diego, like it can be kind of rural if you go a little east in the county. And we were up in the Valley Center area, which is kind of out there. And basically the math on getting an ambulance out there versus us just taking her to the hospital was, we got to just take her. And so we took her, and this was probably, I don't know, midnight, 1 a.m, something like that. Get her to the hospital. They pump her stomach. They take care of her. And then at the end of our shift, 6 a.m., we go back by, and she's up and alert, sitting up in bed, drinking orange juice. And she like thanked us, and her mom was there. And like, that was like one of the best feelings ever. And that was like that moment where like, I was like, man, this is, I cannot freaking cop. And so when it didn't happen, I kind of was like, well, what now? And I was just working a construction gig, and then the band blew up, and I kind of put all my energy into that. So it's weird how life happens sometimes,
Yeah, it is. It is. When did you find time, man? When did you have time to play? And I mean, the band just blows up. It doesn't just, you had to get better and better and better. I mean, it sounds like you were getting up, working all day, and then were you just busting your ass on the weekends, or just playing the clubs when you could, whenever, in the middle of the
Yes,
night, or how that?
I had that 20-year-old energy, where you could just go, go, go. I look back now and I go, man, I could not do that again. But yeah, at the time I just had that 20-year-old's energy. And yeah, it was just, once I aged out of the sport program, my
Sure.
my
Yeah.
life freed up a bunch. And so really I was just doing the band and working, and that was pretty much it. And I was into hot rods, so I had like an old car I'd work on sometimes. But really, I think I've always been one of those people that like, if I can put a lot of energy into something, I like that. Like, it's good for me to like try to take it as far as you can. Like, I was really way into BMX as a kid, and I would like spend weeks building these BMX tracks like out in the field across the street, just digging in the summer, building all these jumps. And we would just ride all day, every day. We just try to make these jumps bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where like the jumps were like taller than me at some point. And that's just how I've been. I just always want to take something as far as I can go. And so with the band, when I met Sean, the guy that we started the band together, he had a similar personality. And so you put the two of us together and we just never let up.
I know you being in San Diego has its own metal scene, just like here being in New York, we have our own metal scene. And you go to see bands every week. I was one of those kids. And even if a band is great, it really is a needle in a haystack that band is going to blow up on the national level. I mean, Carnifex have had albums that have charted on Billboard. So I'm just wondering, at what point did you realize, like, okay, this is not just a chapter of my life. This is going to go on to be what I do professionally.
Yeah, you're right about that. The music industry is like the furthest thing from meritocracy. It really almost, your level of effort and skill almost have very little to do with it. But I think for me, it was probably 2012 was probably when I kind of realized like this might be a thing. We signed a new deal with Nuclear Blast that got us out of our Victory deal, which our Victory deal is a saga in itself. But
I would love to
like
hear about
any
that
new
after
band,
this, because as a music fan, I
yeah.
know that there are so many bands with horror stories of Victory.
Oh, I got the horror stories for you.
Good.
Yeah, it wasn't great. But we did the classic young band thing, which was, you get a contract and you see, oh, we're going to get $27,000 to make a record. And that was just like, well, we made our first record for $600. So 27,000 is insane. Why would we not sign this? So we did. But then all the fine print is, that's the only money you're ever going to get for that
And that's for
record. Good
Victory,
luck.
not Nuclear Blast, you're saying, right?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
Victory, right? So when we were in that deal, it kind of became obvious that we weren't going to really be able to make a whole lot of money other than what we were making on the road. And while we were doing good on the road, it wasn't necessarily life-changing money. You could, same as any job you could get anywhere else. And so, you kind of wonder, we were in that deal for 7 years. A couple of years go by and you think, well, maybe this is just all it's going to be, right? And then when we got to the Nuclear Blast deal, we saw, okay, this is what a good contract looks like. And also the band had grown. So we actually had some leverage. It wasn't like we were just this new band with no history. We had some history, we had some leverage, we had some sales, bankable sales. And so that deal was actually pretty good. And I think at that point, when we started touring and releasing records with them, then I think I was like, wow, we could actually keep this going for a while. And then, I mean, we've been in that deal since 2012, 2013, somewhere right in there. We're still with them right now.
It's crazy too, because I noticed like every great heavy band in that extreme metal genre, it seems like, is on Nuclear Blast. I mean, I just saw 96 Bitter Beings last night, which is Darren Miller from CKY's current band. Like, they're on Nuclear Blast. So many great bands are on Nuclear Blast. But yeah, I have friends in bands who have those crazy stories of Victory records, and I know that's why it like went downhill from there for a lot of bands, where they had to, jump labels and do something different. But I would just imagine, because I'm just thinking of the point where you knew that this band was it. that had to have been when, at least around the time you decided to do the full throat sleeve, because to me, that's a statement of like, fuck it, I'm not doing anything else.
I wish I had that type of forward thinking. Now, I got my throat tattooed in 2005. So yeah, I've had my throat tattooed since 05.
So you're basically, that was when you're like, well, I better go all in on this shit, because if it doesn't work, then I just got a throat tattoo and I'm never gonna work in an office.
I'd love to say I had that much foresight, but I didn't. I think I kind of felt like, like, hey, my dream of being a cop's dead, and I guess I'm gonna be in a band now, and that was kind of it. Like, I saw other metal dudes had it done, and I just thought, like, that looks gnarly. I guess I'll do that. I probably wasn't the most intelligent dude,
It worked out, buddy. It worked out though, man. I mean, it fits perfect now. But I didn't know. I thought the same thing like Ian said. Like, well, shit, he must have done that when they blown up. He's like, fuck it, we're blowing up. I can do it now. But well, good. That's some good luck right there.
It's funny too, because like the banner across the top says "The chances we take." That's my throat banner. So it kind of fits in.
So you glitched, so we missed that, but now we'll get that's classic, dude. That's epic, right? Actually, that's pretty fucking epic, right there. How you did. You knew something.
I wish I had more foresight when I was 20. But I didn't.
So
I was really just on a wing and a prayer back then.
Yeah, that's how 20. That's how kind of we all were. But I didn't have enough balls to get a throat tat. Definitely when I was 20. Right? If I would have, then I wouldn't have got it in the army. See how it works out. If I would have got it, then I definitely wouldn't have gotten the army. They would have said, "No, you're already screwed up enough as it is. Now we're barely letting you."
Yeah, and I wish one of the guys at the sheriff's department would have said, hey, go sign like a 4 or 6 year contract and then come back. We'll hire you. Like, none of them said that to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I kind of get annoyed that I had like so little direction from adults back then.
Yeah. And when was that? You said that was the 90s, 2000. That was 2000s, 90 or late 90s, early 2000s.
No, that would have been it would have been 2000, and I think it was the beginning of 2003 when I applied, like March of 2003.
And when they're full, they don't. Beyond, and not that he doesn't care, but when they have enough people, they don't have the foresight to say, hey, we may be down, we may probably need to stock up on guys and put them in the right direction. And they just, I mean, I applied for the FBI when I was out of college. Saying, this is nobody told me what I needed to do. It's just they did. You're right. That's adults, but maybe that's what we need. It's like, dude, adults just like, hey, just figure it out for your fucking self. Go, I'm not going to tell you shit. Go figure. I think that's honestly what we need more of to our day's youth is like, quit telling these kids what to do. Just let them go fucking figure it out, and let them bump their knees a little bit. Get a throat tattoo, and and it'll work. And maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't.
Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. Yeah. I'm definitely a product of good luck. It's about as much advice on being adult as I got.
I don't know. You because you enjoy what you do, obviously, but you've worked your ass off, dude. None of the people that we've
it's
had,
hard work.
It is. You put the time in. Nobody. Well, actually, the victory story, you kind of went into it. Now, I guess that's a good segue into it. What can you tell us more about it? Because I'd like to hear it. Ian knows a lot more about the music industry. I know about listening to it, but he gets into the some of the down and dirty stuff. I'd like to know what they did to really screw you and screw you over is what it sounds like they did.
Yes. Well, okay. So when we got signed by Victory, we were on the outside of the music business. We're a new band. San Diego is not necessarily the hub of the music scene, so we didn't know the players. We didn't know who had a reputation, who was cool, who sucked. We didn't know any of that stuff. We just knew, Victory Record had Darkest Hour, it had Between the Buried and Me, it had Hatebreed, and so those were bands that we liked. And why would you not? Hey, dude, everyone knows Victory Record. We could be on MTV. MTV2, Headbangers Ball and all this stuff. And then again, you get a contract and you see, 27,500. That was what our deal was for. And your mind's just blown, right? You tell me we get almost 30 grand to make a record. We just did a record for $600. you're like this. We did it. We made it. And what we didn't know was that Victory Records has a reputation, and the people that run that label and owned that label at the time, it's since sold, but at the time they had a reputation in the music industry. We didn't know any of that, and so we sign our deal and start doing our thing, and we quickly realized that the honeymoon is over. Now that we signed on the dotted line, we're in their world, and they're going to decide all the rules.
Okay.
And there was I guess personality differences or clashes. You can just chalk those up to different people, but we had a lot of clashes with their staff as far as how they were trying to market the band and what their perception of us was. And then we've come to find out there's some language in the contract that's really not to our favor. And one line in particular, cross collateralization of royalties. Watch out for that one, because that means is that when you generate royalties for them, right? So our first record, them, it charted on Billboard and went on to sell almost 40,000 copies. And this is, CDs. So there's money in CDs.
Yeah.
Not a mountain of money. Maybe there's 30, 40, 50 grand owed to the band, something like that. Well, what cross collateralization of royalties allowed the label to do was take that money that was coming in, and rather than pay it to us, they were allowed to redirect it into marketing costs. Now, the way deals are structured is essentially it's a really bad bank loan. So your royalty rate is what you get paid back at. And so our royalty rate was 11%, very poor. That meant every dollar they spent on us, you don't pay it back 1-to-1. You pay it back with your royalty percentage, right? Yeah. So essentially we got a bank loan at 89% interest, right? Which is insane. That's predatory lending, right? But music industry is the Wild West. There are no rules, no unions, no associations. It's just more good luck. So when you take, let's say you have $50,000 that a band earned through royalties. If you say, oh, well, you know what, we're gonna keep this record pumped up, and we're gonna put all this back into marketing. That 50 grand that they spent marketing now, think about how much you have to generate to repay it back at an 89% interest rate, right? Your 11% pittance is what's paying back that 50. And so what that allows them to do is to actually never disperse any funds to the band. Any money generated, they just go, oh, well, we're going to put that into marketing. And then you have to then pay back that marketing. It's like infinite money glitch for the label.
Wow.
Right. And so that's what happened. And that's what they did for years and years and years and years. And when I say this, we never got a penny from them. That's not hyperbole. I'm not paraphrasing. We literally never got 1 cent in royalties from them ever. I've never received a royalty check from Victory Records ever. And all in, we've sold about 110,000 albums for them.
Jeez,
never seen a cent, nothing.
Did you ever try to go into them and try, hey guys, you guys are, or was it just, we got screwed and you're just gonna have to eat it? That's just how it goes.
So, yeah, I mean, so then it comes down to, right, like how much of a legal battle can you mount here? And as an underground metal band, the few bucks that we make, they're going to all of us in the band, because, right, split everything 5 ways. Yeah. And we're trying to keep the lights on here at home. And, you can look up a really, it was kind of an infamous lawsuit in, I think, maybe 2013 or so. This band called The Day to Remember, who was on Victory Records, and
who was let's throw in there bringing in all the money.
Very popular band, way more popular than we were, like selling out like stadiums, not stadiums, but like really big venues, arenas, I guess. So they do have the money to mount a legal defense, and they're selling millions of records, not getting any money. So they get a legal team and they go after them and they sue, and they uncover like $7 million in unpaid royalties. And they went to court with it. It took years to play out, and the court ruled in their favor. And Victory had been doing what everybody knew they were doing, which is essentially keeping money from their artists that the artists were legally due. And yeah, so Victory lost that lawsuit a day to remember one. You can Google that and see all the numbers right there. And that actually that kind of was the end of the label. Honestly, I think they got bought not too long after that. Other bands had sued them. That band Atreyu had sued them, and they settled. I know bands that went on to bigger labels. They went through lawsuits, but the bigger labels were funding it to get them out of their deal, so the bigger label could sign them. That band, Taking Back Sunday, I think had that situation. Big, like a big rock band. So yeah, we didn't know any of this when we signed, right? You just, you see your buddy's band on the label, you think about MTV, and you see a dollar sign, and it's like, what else is there to think about? Let's go. And then once you get into it, you realize, wow, this probably wasn't the best deal we could have signed. Maybe a lawyer would have been a good idea, but back to that whole not knowing much when you're 20.
Right, and we do trust. I trust. I mean, hey man, I've trusted my own government. Probably shouldn't have a few times. I know one time in particular, probably shouldn't have, but we do. We do. And I think good people generally trust and would like to go back just to handshake deal. But sadly, that's just not the case anymore with most crooked people out there, because they just want more money, and they'll step on the less talented people will step on the talented people's backs to get that money.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this interview with Scott Ian Lewis from Carnifex. Really enjoyed talking with him. Before we continue, our sponsors, they really help keep us going. If you support them, it really helps support the show. And we also just stand behind all of our sponsors. So if you've been listening for a while, you know that Fort Scott Munitions has been with us since day one. Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact, TUI, and soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, or you can just go to fsm.com, use the promo code BATTLELINE, one word, and you're going to get 15% off your order. So that's fsm.com. Promo code BATTLELINE for 15% off. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. As I said recently on Instagram, if you follow us at Battleline Podcast, we've been saying our prayers, taking our collagen to quote Hulk Hogan incorrectly. And Bub's Naturals has been with us for a long time, and I know it's something that's a part of your daily life, whether it's the collagen protein, the MCT oil powder, the apple cider vinegar gummies. It's the best supplements on the market.
It has so helped, and especially my recovery from my quadricep tear, my quadricep tendon tear rupture. It has helped me get back on the horse. It was 110 out, and I went and ran a couple miles today. And I couldn't be at the point I am without taking Bubs. And guys, it is the best collagen out there. Don't take Jennifer Aniston or her word for what she takes, because it's crap. Take my word for it. Believe me, that they're pushing myself to the limit and taking that collagen protein, then taking that MCT oil with the coffee. It's great creamer for it as well. It has helped me with the pre-workouts and getting that good little jib I need before I go to workout. So, and of course, supports Bub and the Glendora Memorial Foundation, which is just a cherry on top to this stuff. So best stuff out there by far.
Yeah, and in addition, if you're looking for coffee, the best coffee in the market, Bub's Brew.
Yeah.
You also got Hydrate or Die if you're looking for hydrate packets. So they're going to have something that's going to fit your nutritional needs, your supplement needs. So just go there right now, bubsnaturals.com. Make sure to use the promo code BATTLELINE. When you use the promo code BattleLine, you get 20% off anything that you order. Once again, that's bubsnaturals.com. Promo code BattleLine. For any of you checking this out for the first time, make sure to subscribe, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. Also, check out our Etsy store, battlelinepodcast.etsy.com. And yeah, that's it. We're going to get back to the interview right here with Carnifex's Scott Ian Lewis.
I'm going to go a different direction now. I think we beat that horse dead. But your music is dark. It's supposed to be. It is. That's how do you keep from going down those demon holes, dude, and not coming out of them? Because you have to go somewhere to write that music. It just doesn't come. I mean, maybe it does, but I don't think so. I think just as being human, you have to go to some dark places to write that. From my own experience, from just being a speaker and going to dark places to go do my talks when I used to be angry I was angry all the time. Damn near dropped me to putting a gun in my mouth. How do you go to those places, then come out? Because you're a father and you got a life, and you seem pretty stable to me watching. I mean, maybe you're not. I don't know. I mean, aside from the stuff behind you, but
it's therapy. It's therapy, man. That's what it is. And it took me time to realize that too, because while I was going through this journey as a musician, I'm going through a journey as a young man too, right? So I don't know if it's all young men or some young men, but I was really angry when I was young, and I don't really know why. I had some crash traumas from childhood, and maybe I was a bit young to see some of the stuff I saw at the mortuary and when I was rolling with the sheriff's department. But by and large, I came out generally unscathed. But I just was angry all the time, and I couldn't quite figure it out. And before the band, I wasn't cool. Didn't have great luck with girls. Was not wanted by women. I was not a cool dude. And I was always like tall and skinny. So it just kind of I felt like an outsider, and I think maybe that's probably where some of my frustration came from. And so I had to channel that anger somewhere. And over the years, and kind of reflecting on my lyrics now that I'm older, I realized, well, that was all therapy. And the thing about therapy is when you go in, you sit down and talk to a therapist, what are you talking about? You're talking about bad stuff. You're talking about stuff that you probably don't want to talk about in general conversation, dinner table conversations. It's a purge. Therapy is a purge. And this is just another version of that. It's therapy, but I'm not sitting down across from a therapist or psychiatrist. I'm here with the microphone. I'm here with a pad and pen. I'm here with the audience who is finding it and relating to that need to purge and get the frustration out. And just like in therapy, you might have a good cry, you might get mad while you're going through it, but when you leave, it's done. It's out. You talked about it, and now you can move past it. And that's, to me, that's exactly what the music is.
I completely agree. That's why I listen to it. I mean, that's why it does, and that makes perfect sense. So sorry, my question was dumb. No,
it's a good question.
I just thought, and especially, but now, because now is it difficult still to reach down to those low areas? Because you for me, you're successful, brother, and your band is successful. Your band's excellent. Does this just the stuff in there, the risk, and now you added, your latest album, you've added even some strings to it. You've added more to it. Who's the girl? Wilson is her name. She just sang with one of your songs. It wasn't World War X. It was
Elisa. From Arch Enemy.
You've so obviously you've grown and you're making it bigger. So is it more difficult to go to those dark spots because you are successful? Because
it is, and actually it's funny because I kind of oscillate between hyper personal records and records that are more kind of universal. Yeah. So there are albums out there that we've done that are super personal and very dark, and then there's also concept album out there where I kind of that emotion, and I'm so much anymore. It's about the branch division, and because that was like a big thing I remember as a kid, and thought it was cool. You're like 10 years old and you see ATF, FBI like blowing his house up. I thought it was cool. And then later you learn about it and you realize, oh, there's a complete psycho behind this thing. Hey, that's a good thing to write a record about. So that was what Hell Shows Me was about. It was about
okay. And by the way, you cut out a little there, but I'll fill in the others. You were saying the Branch Davidians is what inspired it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So that's a concept album, and then there's records like Die Without Hope is a very personal record, and then the record we did before last, Graveside Confessions, I wrote completely during the pandemic, which was a real kind of yo-yo emotional effect for me, going from the band was doing better than ever. 2020 was supposed to be this massive year for us, and then out of nowhere, boom, we're shut down. Everything's locked down. And out here in SoCal, where we are, it was like under lock and key. Nothing was going on. And so you had nothing to do but reflect on your life, where you are, what you've done. And, you guys remember how the news was out of the gate. It was 2 million people are going to be dead. This could go on for 4 to 5 years. It was like end times. And so in my head, I'm like, well, I guess that's the end of the band, like we're never going to play again. And if these things do end, like no one's going to be in a place to care about some metal band, right? We're going to have, all these people are going to be dead.
A lot of bands felt that way. Like bands that I know were saying, concerts, it's going to be a thing of the past. Like people were really feeling that way because venues were there's venues on Long Island that are no longer here that had to shut down for the pandemic, and they never came back.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we were just about to leave on a tour with a band called Three Teeth. It was going to be this huge co-headline tour, and 8 hours before the bus showed up, it's March 12th, we get a call from our agent saying, hey, this whole thing's done. Like the tour's canceled. It's off. I have all the crew at my house. I have, $45,000 worth of printed merch sitting in my driveway waiting to get loaded into this bus trailer. We were about 70 grand into this tour, and the tour was supposed to make us about 300,000, and that was it. It was done. Tour's over. So we're sitting here on $70,000 of money out, no prospects of making a dime. And like I said, my wife and I just bought a house in January. It was like figure it out. And that's when, and then not long after that, because we get an advance from the label, if we do a record, we said, well, obviously we got to make a record because we need some money. We got to figure out a way to get somebody in the accounts, and it was make a record because we get our advance from the label. So we started doing a record, and it was Graveside Confessions, and all those lyrics were really just very introspective, kind of feeling dumb, honestly, like, wow, so my whole life sort of just amounted to this wet fart of, it's over. We just kind of unceremoniously just, ganked the whole thing, just like, yeah, COVID's here, you're done. We you're non-essential, right? Wasn't that the thing?
Yeah, non-essential, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just like, wow, I really know how to pick them. And yeah, so that record was personal because you're really kind of sorting through those emotions of inadequacy and how do you measure up? And also I was 37 when we made that record, so I'm at a point where you have some maturity to look back and kind of question everything you've done. I'm sure all of us have been there at some point where you get on the other side of all these things you long to do, but somehow you're still you. You're like, wow, I'm still me. I still am not like, I'm not, I still question things. I still have question my confidence, question my abilities, question if what I did mattered. Does it mean anything? And that's a lot of what that album's about. And that's kind of a universal experience, I think, for young men becoming kind of more mature men, which is where I was at. And so that's what I put into the songs.
Well,
Yeah. You know
you
what I wanted to
persevered. Yeah, you persevered
absolutely.
through. That was all. I mean, that's a lesson in itself to a lot of those youngsters. And again, us as adults that didn't teach you anything, said go figure it out on your own. Shit. Well, look. Maybe that was a positive because look. Well, hey, COVID's up. I'm non-essential because Dr. Kevorkian said that I'm non-essential, so I got to figure it out. I think being as adults doing that to us when we were younger and not telling us, we look back as what an asshole. Why didn't he just tell me what to do? I
Right.
think it did make us stronger down the line because when shit happened, like, well, we got to figure it out. And obviously you did because you're still kicking ass to this day. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, it's fine. But what I was going to ask that I think ties into some of this is you were talking about like your admiration for the military, meeting guys who were in the military, special ops, who were fans of the band.
Yeah.
And the thing that sometimes military members, maybe Chris, they get kind of offended when you compare other things to the military because other jobs, whether you're in a band, whatever you do, you're not going to die. You're not putting your life on the line. I mean, other than, I guess you could die in a tour bus accident or something like that. But
Yeah.
But the truth is, I do think being in a band, especially a band of your caliber, is very similar to the military, not in the combat aspect, but like you are either in a van or a tour bus with these four other guys on the road months on end.
Yeah,
you have a mission, and it's just like you're going to have to find a way to get along with these guys. And people do wonder why bands are never like usually never the exact same lineup when they started as they are now. And I think the amount of conflict that goes into like getting this mission completed, getting this tour done with other guys in such close quarters that, if you can't stand the guy, you're going to have to find some way to get along. And especially a band like Carnifex, it's not a band like Metallica where you could say, well, we're going to go home and make millions of dollars. Like that's not how it works out for you guys. So I've always thought that was kind of the interesting thing about being in a touring band, especially you who has, deep admiration for the military.
Cool. Yeah. So that is a great question. I'm glad that you prefaced it with the obvious caveat, which is no, nobody's shooting at us. Our friends aren't going to die. Although over the years, I have lost many friends.
I'm sure.
Mostly to drugs and a couple of suicides. But yeah, you make some great points because we are gone a lot. And early on, like 2006 to 2012, man, we were doing 300 shows a year. Wow. So I'm gone 10 months. And that wreaks havoc on all personal relationships, and not just with, the girl back home. Your buds, like you don't have those people stop waiting around. Yeah. You know what I mean? And really, what you come to realize is probably not too dissimilar from being out deployed. Is really, man, the only friends I have now are the people to the left and right of me. That's it. Like. Yeah, people will say, oh, what you're doing is cool from back home. But, a couple of years go by, 5 years, 6 years, a decade. Those people move on. You know what I mean? They move on. And really, you're just friends with the people around you. And not everybody makes it. Some dudes tap out. Just life on the road isn't meant for them. And to me, that always just was like and everyone bites the dust. Like, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to outlast all these fuckers, and, that's kind of that part of me that just like, some competitive thing where it's like, I'm just going to outlast everybody. And, it destroys relationships. My older sister had kids and I didn't see any of them grow up. Her oldest is now going to college.
Wow.
And, because I think he was born in 2001. And so he was like a young kid, and then boom, I'm on the road when he's young, and she had other kids, never saw any of them grow up. Now they're all teenagers and early 20s. And yeah, it wasn't until I met my wife that I could keep a relationship with a girl back home going. We're kind of like a novelty, I think, to women, and respect to my wife. She's not like this, but I think a lot of women, and I've seen it play out with my buddies, at first, a girl thinks, hey, they hit the lottery. They got this guy in a band and he's popular. And when he comes to town and the venue's packed and I get free drinks and get to hang out, that fades though. that fades. And then all of a sudden it's like, so when are you coming back? And it's like, October. You know what I mean? Get back and it's like, hey, like, I'm out of here in 2 weeks. And then it's all of a sudden it's not so fun anymore,
Oh,
which I think there's probably some similarities there.
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys,
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. And that stress that puts on, because even you try not to think about what's going on at home, but you can't. You're human. You're gonna think what's going. And if the relationship at home isn't good, it definitely affects the relationship on the road. And now this is getting segue into a great this question I have for you. It's just not a great question. I don't have great questions. I just have questions. But now, you being a father, and how has that affected now with your turn? Because you still got Ian said you're a touring band. That's what you guys do.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing though? You're older now though. You've doing it for a while. You've figured it out. You've got son. Is that right? Am I correct?
Yeah, son. Which his name's actually Ian, which is funny.
No,
Oh wow, that's funny.
We're really perpetuating the Ian Scott thing that we have going on here.
How do you, I mean, what do you? How is a father? And we do have a lot of veterans that listen. A lot of fathers like myself with we all have our issues, and I grew up. I missed the first 10 years of my oldest son's life. He's in college now, and I still, and my daughter, she's 14, and I missed 10 years of her life being gone. And rebuilding those bridges to being a father again. What do you do? I mean, how do you do that now? And have you stopped? Do you reduce the number of tour dates? Do you, now that we have this does help. I hate cell phones. I hate it, but it does help being able to do video calls where I don't just have to try to find a computer to Skype home anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
So
well,
what have you done differently?
Yeah, I'm a new dad. My son was just born a couple months ago.
Oh, congrats, man. I didn't know that here. Sorry, bro. I didn't know that. Congratulations.
It's not something I really put out there. Obviously no problem talking about it here, but despite the public nature of the band, I'm actually a pretty private person. So yeah, I didn't really broadcast it, but yeah, I'm a new dad, and my wife was pregnant through the last couple tours I did.
Wow.
And even that was a bit of a challenge, because you want to be there, and you want to be a good guy and do everything right, but then at the same time it's like, dad's got to go make money. This is my job, you know what I mean? So you got to find that balance. And really what it is you said it there with, like, we do tour less now. Part of that is because the band's bigger and more established and more expensive for promoters. There's a lot of radius clauses in the agreements that we sign with them. So we actually can't really tour the way we used to, even if we wanted to. Like the days of doing 300 shows a year, we kind of did that already. That's just not, I don't think we could even do that if we wanted to. So really now we're doing, 2 or 3 tours a year. So maybe that's 4 to 5 months a year, which is just still something, it's still almost half the year. And really, I try to live in the moment as much as can. So when I'm home now, I try to really be there. And that's not something I was great at before. I was always in my head thinking about next tour, next album, next whatever. And kind of not taking my foot off the gas as far as my work or my public life. And I didn't really give my personal life much opportunity to just be,
Yeah.
So I'm really focusing on that more,
I wanted to ask you a touring related, like, music question, because you got the tour coming up in October, which we'll plug as we get out of here, which should be really cool for people coming out to that. But I was wondering your take on this, and I think like, this has been the controversy in the metal world, I feel like, for the past couple years, and I wanted to hear your take on it. What do you think of, like, more and more bands using tracks in the metal world happening? Because for one, there's those bands like Born of Osiris who I think they integrate EDM, electronic dance music, into their music. So I think if you see a band like that, which I have, and you don't expect to hear some laptop and some backing tracks, you're listening to the wrong band. But there's been more and more metal shows I go to where there's not a bassist on stage. The bass is on a track. The main screams are on a track. And I'm like, I used to see this more in the pop music world, and I feel like it's really been a bigger controversy and more prevalent now in the metal world.
It is, and I think a lot of that is it's easy, you know. It's you don't need a bass player because the way these audio programs are now, like Ableton and Cubase and just like all of them, it's like you can literally have what a bassist play right in time with your click track for your drummer. So you don't. It's going to sound great. Yeah, a person's not up there, but it's going to sound great. What does that mean for the band? It means one less person to pay, one less person to feed, one less guy in the van. And, you don't make a lot of money when you start out in a metal band. You really have to scrap it out. So I think when that is there, I think bands take it because it maybe it facilitates them being able to tour or split the money less ways, or maybe they just couldn't find a bass player. Finding good musicians is tough. And so they're just trying to do the best with what they have. There's so many reasons why people use different tracks. Now, something like backup screams, that's when I think it gets kind of weird, because that's kind of like, well, I don't know if you need that, or you just, maybe your guy can't pull it off live. Who knows, I try not to judge those bands too harshly, just because you never know what specific circumstance led them there. Obviously, we use a track for things like the violins and the strings, because we can't bring a violinist with us on tour.
And that's the same thing I was saying with like Born of Osiris. Like you're not going to hear those sounds live. So yeah, you're going to have a laptop on stage. I think some people who are the purists, like the Eddie Trunks of the world, like they don't understand that yeah, you're going to have a laptop, but there's definitely a fine line between like, this is tasteful and this is overkill.
I think it just comes down to like intention and reasonability. If your intention is to like fool the audience and think like, oh no, the guys up here are making all this music, that's shot. Don't do that. But if it's, hey, we're not going to hire violinists and bring them out on tour. So yeah, there's going to hear some violins coming through off the laptop. I get it, right? It's like you want to emulate the record, and not only that, I don't think people need to see a violinist on stage to sort of get an extra bit of atmosphere. It's not like they're the main show. It's just something that you're adding to get a little bit of depth to the guitar, as a harmony with the guitar, or something like that. I think it just comes down to intention, which is really the heart of art, is intention. And I think if your intention is, well, we're just going to try to give them the best show we can, but we're not going to try to like pull anything over on anybody, then I would say, go for it. But if it's like, if you're miming or lip syncing, or a guy's on stage pretending to play the solo that's actually tracked, yeah, that's whack for sure.
Yeah, I as an old man, I'm like Clint Eastwood now, sitting on his front lawn, still in the old school. I want to see everybody play their instruments, because that's what, to me, that's what I grew up with. And I do think we get away from that a lot. And man, I'm a grouchy old fucker. So it's good to hear though that you guys, and from what I've seen and the videos, you guys are still making tremendous videos. I still wish we had MTV and all that, because your videos are still kick ass, but you guys are still all there playing your instruments. And to me, I want to see that. I want to see y'all up there. I want to see you do it. I don't know how you do it without losing your voice. I have no fucking idea. That was good. I mean, and we'll wrap it up here, but I'm sorry, I didn't want to keep you long, but that was my last, and it was a simple question. Is how the hell do you do that? How do you got the screams and the guttural and you're doing all that? How are you not losing your voice?
Technique. It's technique, it's technique. And after a while it becomes muscle memory, just like you going in the door, right? Yeah. It's someone go, how are you so fast? How are you this, how are you that? And you're like, I just do it. I don't know. And, I mean, you do it enough and all of a sudden you're just like, you're literally thinking about something else while you're doing it. And I guess that's how you're good at it, right? It's like your mind is somewhere is a minute ahead or a half second ahead of what your body's doing. And I've been touring since 2006, and I think I've played over 5,000 shows at this point. Wow. So it's muscle memory and it's technique. And probably similar to what you guys were doing is you're doing it with a little effort as possible to be effective.
Yeah.
I'm not up there, trying to blow a vein, screaming my heart out. I'm screaming just enough to get the tone I want and get the sound I want. And then that's it, right? There's no reason to go any harder than that because now you're not efficient. Yeah. And now you can't go for an hour because I got to do an hour-long set. So if I blow it all out on the first song, I can't give a show to these people. I can't do what they're paying to see. So it's about technique. It's about being measured. It's about doing enough to get it done and then stopping right there because you got to get through it for an hour.
Dude, and being efficient, like efficiency. I say that to my guys when I come train. We don't want to be fast. You just want to be efficient. You want to do it and you want it because you don't know. This fight may end in 5 minutes. It may end in 13 hours. You got to have that energy levels. It is and that's why I love having you guys on the show. I know we get a lot of veterans milk, but there is some crossover in the way we do things. And then the travel, of course, with the deployments and being away from home. And you're spot on. I think having your father and your grandfather and being in that military atmosphere, I'm your therapist now. It's your therapist talking. Is that I really do think it has helped you become as successful as you are because you're saying a lot of the key words that we say in the military, whether you know it or not. And it's why there's been longevity to your career. It's because you have been able to be efficient, but you've also been able to handle the ups and downs. You've been able to handle the deployments. You've been able to figure out what a good woman is and what a good woman is not.
Oh yeah.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's also, I think people with common goals and common talents are drawn towards each other. And I don't think that was it was a shock to see that. Man, Carnifex follows me on it. That's badass, dude. But now
you're the badass, bro. You're the badass.
Now talking to you is like, well, damn it, we have a lot in common, and you have a lot in common with that community, with that special operations community, which is why a lot of us are drawn to the music, plus also the music itself, which gets hey man, you got to go to those places sometimes. Go ahead, but you got more to say.
Oh well, I was just agreeing with you, and I think maybe the parallel is it's when you do something for a long time, and kind of like a deployment or going out on an op. Like I got to go on stage whether I'm in a good mood, a bad mood, no mood. I'm sick of it. Like great. Another one. Can we just be done with this? Like, it's not as cool as everyone thinks, right? Like, just send me home, all right? We still got to go up there, and much like you guys, the expectation has to be met, regardless of how you feel. How you feel does not factor into this equation whatsoever. When I go on stage, I have to give the performance to the best of my ability, regardless of what I went through. And there were plenty of days where maybe I just, prior to my current relationship, because it's fantastic, but maybe there was an argument or maybe it's not working out or fill in the blank, or, hey, maybe somebody back home died or whatever, it none of that actually mattered when it came time to play the set. I still had to go out there and give it not only the best I could, but I had to be giving it everything it was owed for everybody who was out there counting on me, my bandmates, the people in the crowd, you name it. And I think when you do that enough, you kind of realize that as people, we have a lot more tenacity than maybe we think. And I use that to fuel like going to do a workout when I don't want to, because I think back, like, there's so many times I didn't want to go on stage and I went and did it. And guess what? I got it done. It was fine. It actually felt better afterwards, You're like, well, that's over now. Now I can have a good day, Now I don't have to think about this thing coming up I didn't want to do. And it's like that. All right, just start your workout and just get it done. And when you're done, then you can say, I did it. Got you. Now I get to, fuck off and do whatever I want. And I learned that from being on the road and just kind of realizing there's a lot of value in cumulatively doing something, just doing it every day and letting it build up to something and not letting a little bit of discomfort stop you from doing what you should be doing.
Yeah.
That's
And speaking about being on the road, you got this tour coming up in the fall, headlining US tour with Signs of the Swarm, To the Grave, and Last 10 Seconds of Life. That's a band who's been out there a long time. I've seen shows of
Mm-hmm.
theirs many years ago. And I hopefully look forward to meeting you when you guys play New York, because I'll be at that Patchogue date. And my friends
Perfect.
in Dr. Acula, who I go way back with,
Oh man,
they're the
I
local
remember
support. Those are
guys.
guys who have victory horror stories. And I love
They
Dr.
were on
Acula.
Victory as well. Wow, I
Yep,
didn't
yep.
even know that. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
well,
and it's a very different lineup, because now Dr. Acula is like a bunch of the original guys. And like I said, I go back, my first gig in radio was Fangoria Radio, and Dr. Acula played. And quite honestly, everyone who was there, I feel like, when Dr. Acula played, was like, what the fuck is this? And for me, I was like, this is awesome. And they're all Long Island guys, all Long Island Italian guys. And like, we all became friends. And that was 16, 17 years ago. So it's cool to see them opening for you. So of course I'll be there at Stereo Garden in Patchogue. But yeah, if you guys go to carnifexmetal.com, you can see all the dates at Carnifex on now X and Instagram. At Scott Ian Lewis on Instagram. And man, this has been an honor. I still have plenty of questions, but we'll hopefully do a part 2 and get to those.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm not going anywhere if you want to fire any off, but yeah, whatever your schedule is. Yeah, man, thank you. The tour is going to be fun. I hope to see you guys out there. Shoot me an email if you're not on Dr. Acula's guest list. I'll get you on ours.
That's what I'll do then, man. I'll let you know, because I'll be there. You know what? I know Chris has to go, but last thing that I'm wondering real quick was, so like I said, this happened because I saw your comments on the Corey Taylor interview, and it was funny. You wrote 2 of the goats, referring to Chris and Corey Taylor. So I'm just curious, how did you become a fan of Chris's? Was it 13 Hours? Was it the book? Like, how did you become?
You're not a fan. I don't hate that. Nobody's a fan of my dumbass. I mean, I think we had a comment, but I do. I'd like to, because it's always cool to look at. And one good thing from social media, I hate social media. I really despise it. But
Same.
is these out of the blue relationships and meeting someone like you and then talking to him like, holy shit, there's a lot in common. But yeah, I'd like to know, did you watch 13 Hours? Did you see?
I did, yeah. I mean, so I maybe fan isn't the right word, but admiration is the right word.
Thank you.
And you got to take that one, because I mean, you and guys like you, I do have a lot of admiration for it. And I actually think I ended up finding you through Tom Satterley.
Oh, no shit. Yeah. I'm
a big fan of Tom, and I was listening to a podcast, man, years ago now, where he it was before he had All Secure and kind of before his socials have really taken off. Can't remember the name of the podcast. Maybe it was Military Mentors or something like that. And he recounted his story about being in Mogadishu and all that stuff, and it was extremely inspiring to me. And I had always been on the periphery of appreciating stuff like that. And I think in 2019 or 18, when I first heard him share that story, it was kind of the beginning of a lot of the GWOT guys starting to tell their stories. Before that, I think everyone was still serving and kind of in the thick of it, and hadn't really started sharing their stories yet. And I heard Tom's story, and then bought his book, started following him, and then kind of started following other guys. And I think I was watching like Zero Dark 30, and then 13 Hours, what I can't remember exactly what year 13 Hours came out. Was it 17?
It was 6. It was right at the 16, 17.
Okay.
16 is when it came out, and then 7, it kept going 17. Yeah. So right around that time frame. Yeah.
Right around there. Yeah. I remember watching that movie, and I mean, I have to be honest with you, the movie made me cry.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think that's kind of when I started to feel like more of this, I know it sounds dumb, but kind of guilt. I'm thinking like, damn, these dudes are going over there, and they're fighting for our flag, fighting for our country, fighting for the democracy we want to share with the world. And we're just back home yucking it up. You know what I mean? And just there's so much emotion in that movie and other films like it. That movie, The Outpost, made me cry too.
Yeah.
And it's just like, damn, like these guys are the real heroes. And it was funny because all my years in music, I never found any heroes, to be honest with you. Just a lot of regular dudes, and then a lot of don't ever meet your heroes type dudes, right? Where you thought you liked a dude, and then you meet him, and you're like, yikes, never mind, right? And then I guess it kind of ties back in with my grandfathers, whom I respected quite a bit, but they both passed away when I was a bit young. And then my dad, we kind of had some distance for some years and reconnected more in the last 5 or 6 years.
That's cool.
So I came to appreciate what his life more and his effort more. And then obviously different friends of mine going through it, and I think it was at that time that I started to realize, look, the people I want to admire and emulate and use to inspire, I'm not going to find them in the music biz. And I kind of found them in this soft operator community that has really come out in the last 4 or 5 years. Guys like yourself, guys like Tom, my friend Charles, like other guys that are now out of it and telling their stories. And that's really been inspiring to me lately. And a lot of what they learned, because they were men in their 20s and in their 30s, and now they're in their late 30s and 40s, and they're kind of on the other side of some stuff. They have some perspective, and I glean a lot of diamonds from those podcasts about kind of what to appreciate, when to appreciate it, and kind of the transition, right? It's going to happen for me eventually. I got to transition out of this this music merry-go-round and into real life at some point here. It doesn't last forever. Musicians age in dog years. Like being a 39-year-old musician, you might as well be 59. It's probably kind of like operators, right? Like at some point people are like, yo, you're too old to be here. And I kind of feel the same way. At some point people are just be like, yeah, you move on, man. Like you lived it, let someone else live it, right? So yeah, I draw a lot of inspiration from guys like you, and what you went through watching the 13 Hours movie it's just a holy fuck moment, pardon my French, but that's kind of, it sums it up. It's holy fuck, like how did you guys survive that, not give up, and now you have a smile on your face after the fact? I mean, that's just like a minor miracle in itself right there.
I still cry when I watch it too. Actually, I cry more now than I did when it first screened. I first saw it it's harder to watch now, but to at least tell you this, and I tell this to all because the people that we've had on the show, the musicians are all people that, and their music, before I knew who they were, like yourself, before I even talked to you, it's what got us through, man. So I don't want you to feel any guilt, because the music that you played when we were gone is what tied us back home. So if we're going through bad times, you turn the music on, man. You turn on, you listen, like, okay, I feel like I'm back home. I can get through it. It helps us get through the day. Or if we needed to get pumped up, if we had those, I don't want to go back. Turn that shit on. That's fucking stuff. All right. And then I ain't gonna make fun of me or not. Then I had to come down sometimes too. So sometimes I had to throw a little Coldplay on to come down. Come on, I had to. I listened to it. It's okay.
Same. I put Lana Del Rey on at night.
Oh, dude, I listened to Lana Del Rey, and there was one I was just listening to, Lauren Daigle a little while ago, and then I'll put some country on, some Craig Morgan just to come down. But it did help me. I'm telling you, the music, and I know a lot of the other operators will tell you the same thing. The music, when we were having bad days, we could put our headphones in, sit, and just get the music into us, and it would help us get through. So, buddy, the path you went on is the one you were supposed to go on. I honestly believe that you have helped many get through some tough times downrange when we weren't supposed to. We're not coming home for 6-7 months. How do we get through it? Put the music on.
Well, that means a lot to me, especially coming from you, Chris. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, bro. And I appreciate it. I got to pick up my son here in a little bit, so I know we keep going, and we kept you on a little long, but yeah, I hope we can get you on again, because there's a lot more questions that and things we can get into. And I know Ian is a plethora of musical information. He can ask questions that I would never think of, and that keeps us going. So, but I appreciate you staying longer with us than we had you scheduled, because this was really cool, dude. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
I appreciate you having me.
Nah, man, it's my pleasure at all. And I don't live in New York. I live in Kansas. So when you come through Kansas City, let me know, because that's
okay. Yeah.
If you ever come to the mid, what you do?
Was it Casey Mo or which Kansas?
It's Kansas City. I'm south. I live in rural America now. I am in a small itty bitty town. Kansas City is the closest major hub, but there ain't an interstate within 100 miles where I live anymore.
Doesn't sound so bad.
No, it's not. I'm at that, like you said, that other edge where you finally want to sit back. I'm there. Yeah. I'm on the wrong side of 50 now. So yeah, I got out of the cities and I'm like, okay, I just want to chill out. But keep kicking ass. You're tearing up, and you're a great example of what hard work does. And you have busted your ass for many years in a genre that is small. There's rock, but then there's the deathcore, death metal. They're
like, you know what they are? I'll say they're like, it's like the black tar heroin of metal, because you start with like Metallica, and you're like, cool, but I need to get something heavier. Like, no one starts with Carnifex.
No,
there's a lot of gateway drug to get to Carnifex.
Well, that's what you said. You said Hate Breed. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much the route. Going from Metallica to Hate Breed, and then, oh man, you got Slayer, and then you're going all the way down. Black Dahlia is another one. I mean, it's just
good friends of ours.
So we got a ton more stuff to talk about. I just I do have an 8-year-old son that I did miss those other 2 lives, so I definitely try to make it a point to be part of his. But man, great interview. This was fantastic, man. I love it. And I really appreciate you coming on, man. It really means a lot to me.
Thanks.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks, dude. And I'll see you on Long Island in a couple months.
Absolutely. I'll see you there.
Take care, bud. Be safe.
See you guys.
That's all for this episode of Battleline Podcast. But we're always posting new content on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. That's an order. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes up every Tuesday. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.